Overcoming alcohol addiction. This is my story and the details of how I actually started to win against my addiction. Hey, what's up? I'm Magnify Maggie, and I'm the creator of the Magnify Method, which is an alternative recovery approach that allows you to think different in order to drink different or never again. And to this day, I consider myself an ex-alcoholic, which would not fly in traditional recovery rooms. Pretty sure I would get the boot fairly quickly. But in my own mind and my own self-image and identity, that is absolutely what I deem myself as. And I want to tell you guys the story of how I got here, and also kind of shed some light that there are sensitive subjects, there are some sad spots in here, but I tell this story with pride and actually happiness and excitement, because it was all of these sad dots on my map that led me to be right here with you, changing lives, changing the narrative about what addiction is, and hopefully changing the traditional approaches to reach success in sobriety, or even learning to cut back and moderate successfully. I'm what is known as a COA, or now an ACOA, adult child of an alcoholic. I grew up as a child of an alcoholic, and I was only about 5 when my mom started to drink. I didn't notice, I couldn't verbalize what it was, the difference that I noticed in her, but I can think back and I just remember this stark contrast of the connection that we had versus when she started to drink, the disconnection and the isolation that started to follow. I was 6 when I was learning about what divorce was, and my brothers were informing me about what alcohol was. That's an idea that, I don't think kids really need to be taught that in depth. And I was about 7 years old when I started pouring out bottles of alcohol for my mom, learning to call the cops when things got scary, but then when the cops came, I was being taught to lie to them and walk on eggshells and not tell my teachers and not speak about this in public. And there's so many psychological negative impacts that occur for the children of alcoholics in that home environment. There's actually a whole slew of characteristics that if you are a child of an alcoholic, you are likely to grow up and experience, mainly social issues, relationship issues, as well as addictive issues. Statistics show that a child that grows up in the home with an addict, an alcoholic specifically, they will grow up to either become an alcoholic or they're likely to marry an alcoholic, because that is the environment and the conditioning that they experienced. And that was very, very true for me. I was 12 when my middle brother, Eric, passed away. We were home alone, and he was very mentally unstable. He kind of had assumed the role of enabler for my mom, and he would help her kind of keep the secret and take her to the liquor store and make sure that her parents didn't find out, my grandparents. And he really took on a lot, and he wasn't able to mentally handle all of that. I was very fortunate that I think he basically took the brunt of a lot of the issues that I would have actually experienced. He helped protect me and made sure that I was okay. And if my mom was in a really bad mood, that he was the one that took that force. By his age 14, he couldn't keep up the act anymore. And we were home alone one day, and he went into the back room and he shot himself. And it was still going to be probably a couple hours before anyone was home. So it was me that found him, and I had to call the cops. I called 911, and the whole trauma ensued from that. And it was only about 6 months after Eric's death that I started drinking myself. There's something very interesting that I found in hindsight, looking back in retrospect. Of course, it's all 2020. But the moment that Eric died, I was looking for escape already. It took me 6 months to find alcohol or to use it and say, oh, I know my mom drinks this stuff to make her feel better. But before that, I had really tried to escape with a bunch of different tactics. I was moving from Kansas, where my brother passed away, to North Carolina, where my dad was, and back again, and then back. And I was just trying to run from my own emotions. I was trying to distract myself with friends and unhealthy relationships at age 13. And like I said, it wasn't very long before some of those unhealthy relationships also led me to believe that alcohol could be helpful in escaping. So it was this friend group that I had, and they're like, hey, let's drink. And I'm like, yeah, my mom drinks. It makes her feel good. And so all of this stuff was conditioned into me so that when I was actually met with the choice, do you drink or do you not drink? I was like, heck yeah, let's go ahead and drink. And I remember the first words that came out of my mouth as soon as I felt the warm buzz, and that was, man, no wonder my mom is an alcoholic. And I remember as soon as those words left my mouth, I had like this vision of my whole life ending up like my mom. But at that moment, it didn't matter. It was the first time since I was about 5 years old that I had felt true, genuine warmth and comfort and happiness. And I say all of this for this first part of my story to kind of shed light if you are struggling and you have a child in the home. I don't want this to make you feel guilty or make you feel ashamed or make you feel defeated, like, oh my gosh, what have I done? But rather just to bring awareness to the fact that kids know what's going on, despite the fact that we think that we're being smarter than them. We think that maybe if we spell out alcohol, or I say it's adult juice or something like that, that they're not going to pick up on that. But it doesn't matter what's in your cup. What they're going to notice is the disconnection and the environment, the energy in the house. Are you angry? Are you isolating yourself? Are you actually connected with them and involved? Or are you buzzed and just kind of acting like you're involved? Kids can sense this in their nervous system, in their subconscious mind. They can sense this, and it affects their development. So as I grew up, I noticed that I was becoming my mom. I was developing into the woman that had kind of molded these patterns for me in childhood. I started to drink at age 13, and it didn't stop for almost 16 years. There were little instances in there where I would do better, but all in all, it always came back to drinking, and it was destructive. I mean, 3 to 7 times a week, every day sometimes, drinking 10 plus servings of alcohol, hard liquor. I wasn't a beer girl. I wanted all the hard liquor. I wanted to take them as shots, and I wanted to get drunk fast. There were a slew of consequences that I experienced in my 15-year stint of drinking. Multiple DUIs. I was kicked out of the military. This is something I don't really talk about publicly, but here we are. I graduated high school, and I was very much in this mindset of pleasing other people. My mom didn't please my grandpa as her daughter, so I felt like I needed to step up in that role, and his expectations now became my own personal expectations. So the job that he wanted me to have, I was like, okay, I guess I just need to go after that. And that was to be an Air Force pilot. I had no interest in math or science in that kind of avenue, but because my grandpa wanted me to do it, I wanted to please him. Another type of impact as being a child of an alcoholic is that you want to please everybody. So I really wanted to please my grandpa. So I started studying things in college, enlisting in the military, totally manufactured goals, things that I didn't want in my life, but I thought that it would make me happy because it would make somebody else happy. Well, about 8 months into my military career, I got caught smoking marijuana because I was basically drunk all the time. And then I, on top of being drunk, was like, yeah, I'm never gonna get a UA. I'm never gonna get a urine analysis. It was actually about 3 weeks after my first DUI. So you just imagine all of the embarrassment then, getting kicked out of the military after a hot pee test, and then having been discovered being a total drunk and getting a DUI. Military was basically like, all right, see you later. Then I tried, college, and I was going after these courses that weren't really true to me either. I was still trying to force these other people's expectations on me in my career, what they saw me to be versus what I really wanted to be. So I kept just getting myself lost in alcohol. I was distracting myself with alcohol for the fact that I wasn't staying true to my own calling and my own passions and interests in life. This continued as I worked, and I finally got a job, a really nice job for the circumstances that were apparent at that time in a restaurant. And in this restaurant, I noticed that colleagues, coworkers of mine were getting promoted through the corporate office very quickly. As long as you were a hard worker and you knew all of the specs and you did all the right things, there was opportunity for advancement without college degree. And that sounded really cool to me because that meant that I could keep drinking and I could keep partying, but I could keep excelling at this job. Well, of course, if you look at my track record in the past, it all repeats itself. So the patterns of addictive behavior, another DUI, I was offered opportunities to travel the world and open new restaurants and train hundreds of new employees at a time. My drinking behavior on these openings became so negative that I had to step down. I lost all credibility. So you can definitely look at my drinking stint and say, well, she hit rock bottom there, she hit rock bottom there, she hit rock bottom there. But it wasn't ever really that big of a deal in my mind until it was. I was 27 when another big hit came into my life. The one person that I could have really relied on in my life, despite all of the trauma and all of the experiences from my mom and my brother, that was my dad. And he was always a big proponent, even through the military hurdles and the job demotion, stepping down from my corporate job. Through all of that, he was always my rock. He was always the supportive one that would talk me through things and be my confidant and never judge and just keep me enthusiastic. And I was 27 years old when I came home one day from work and my husband was sitting on the couch and he informed me that my dad was in a fatal motorcycle accident. This was about a year before I quit drinking. That last year, I would say if there were a rock bottom, that was it. The one person in my life that I could rely on, that one relationship, that one positive person in my life since childhood had been taken from me so traumatically and so quickly. I was angry at God. I was angry at life. And that led me to all these bottles back here. Multiple nights a week, multiple days a week. It became a self-fulfilling doom cycle. I talk about that term a lot. It definitely was. So I would consider that, yes, to be rock bottom, but there was a different shift for me as well. It seemed almost as if after my dad passed away, I had more of an awareness that life is so short. I learned this with Eric, but it had been so long. I was 12 years old when he passed away. And then I was 27 when my dad passed away. So this new level of awareness really dawned on me. Wow, I am wasting my life. I am wasting my life in hangover. I wasted the last 5 to 10 years of my dad's life in my own hangover, skipping holidays, not hanging out with him. So I had all of this guilt and remorse, but that actually led me to create change. And I think that was the gut feeling that finally shook me awake in February of 2020. February of 2020, I was 28 years old and I yelled at my husband at a wedding. And obviously that doesn't sound like that extreme compared to all the other things that happened in my life, but it was just that straw that broke the camel's back. I was drunk and I yelled at him for not wanting to dance with me. He had recently undergone neck surgery, so it was very dangerous for him to dance with me. And I woke up the next day and I was just so tired of the anxiety. I was so tired of waking up, not knowing why I was in trouble with my husband, but having to go like apologize for it, super uncomfortable, not knowing how much money I spent, not knowing how many people saw the kind of brawl that my husband had. So all of these things, I just finally put my foot down. I said, I'm not gonna do this anymore. I'm not gonna live my life this way. Life is so short. I have experienced death of 2 of the most significant people in my life, and I see how fragile life is. I don't wanna put myself in this position anymore. And that's really where I've gained gratitude for the passing of my loved ones and how I can move forward with this acceptance of their death, because their death brought me this awareness that, wow, I need to cherish my life. I need to cherish this time that I have in this beautiful vessel. We're all given this vessel and we're not here very, very long. So the death that I experienced actually propelled me to love life more, which is a big perspective shift because it was the death of Eric that had me drinking so heavily for almost 16 years. It was almost like the cause of the curse and then almost like the antidote, one in the same. It just depends on the perspective that you take from it. So February 2020, if you remember, about a month before, everything shut down in the world and we experienced quarantine phases of 2020. I had about a month of sobriety before the world shut down, which I'm so thankful for. I don't know where I would be today if I continued to drink through those quarantines. I remember how happy and powerful I felt in my own environment when I was scrolling through on like a Wednesday afternoon. And if you guys remember people were like posting drinking mimosas at 11 on their Zoom meetings during the first phase of quarantine. I was squared away and I was so proud of myself. But that's not to say that it didn't take a lot of work. That was being at home by myself saying, what do I do with my time? And that's when I intuitively picked up on this idea of taking my mind off of the problem and putting it on the image I wanted to create. I took it off of the fact that, hey, you've really effed everything up in your life. Look at all these things that you've lost. Look at all the people that aren't here anymore, all the time you wasted with them, to what do I want in life? Who do I want to be? Well, I didn't want to be the Air Force pilot. I didn't want to be involved in math and science as far as that kind of realm went. What do I really love? And that was fitness and nutrition and health. I knew from the positive experiences that I had in my drinking days that the positive experiences came from times in my life where I was focused, even if it was just a few days, on health and wellness and going to the gym. So I already had a taste that was proving successful, kind of again as like an antidote. So I doubled down, I tripled down on that. And I started to invest in coursework, certifications, classes to get professionally immersed in fitness, nutrition coaching, what's called behavior change models. Learning all of these and getting certified in all of these kept my mind focused on how can I develop myself? How can I become the next version of myself? And to be quite honest, it didn't seem like I was thinking about alcohol that much. And that's what was so freeing and such a big light bulb for me. I kind of looked around like, does anybody else know about this? Like, nobody else is talking about this. The fact that like when you stop thinking about alcohol, you stop wanting it. Wow, this is so crazy. And for a little while, I actually questioned it. I was like, am I normal that I've just so easily moved past alcohol that I had been obsessing over for almost 16 years. How did that happen? Well, then of course the wheels kept turning and they kept turning. I kept studying and kept immersing myself in new education, new awareness about my mind and how thoughts work. And I started to see that I had intuitively done what's called expansion of conscious awareness. I had stopped thinking with simple consciousness and started thinking, hey, I have control. Instead of being conditioned to react this way, I can reason with myself and I can respond intelligently. That's just a very small little scratching the surface subject of mindfulness, but I started to learn what mindfulness really was. I started to pay attention to my thoughts, and what I realized is that for the 16-year drinking stint, I had constantly been telling myself, you can't do that, Maggie. Why dream that big? You can't ever be healthy. Think about your disease. Think about how you're diseased and damaged. You can't think of that big goal. Remember, you dropped out of college. Remember, you got discharged from the military. So I would bet that if you are sitting somewhere resonating with what I'm saying as far as the background and then your goal of wanting to be healthy and driven and ambitious, that right now you're stuck in a state where you're not consciously aware how big of a bully you are in your mind. I didn't realize, I really thought that I was being positive, but what I was actually doing was, man, I hope I don't mess up today. Think about if that's really positive. That's putting a positive bandage over a negative wound. I hope I don't mess up today. Subconsciously, I'm expecting to mess up. So I had to start to think, I will be successful today. I am successful today. I am learning today. Instead of, I am struggling with sobriety. I am addicted. I am diseased. So this internal narrative shift was what I kind of stumbled upon. And I thank my lucky stars. I don't know if it was Eric up there or my dad just helping me out, helping me find these new strategies, or if it was the universe putting me on the path that I'm truly meant to be on. That everything that I've endured in my life, from my mother's alcoholism and all of those little experiences in between that taught me things, to Eric's death, to all of my negative impacts that happened from alcohol from age 13 to 28, losing my dad, all of these dots on my map, although very sad and some traumatic, they were all teaching me something. They were all leading me to this place where once I got on the right track, I was so aware of the next step, so aware of the next idea to latch onto, so aware of the next strategy to go ahead and try to employ or implement. And I think that is what is truly freeing. It's not going in a room and sitting around and talking about all of the struggles. It's rather putting your mind on the solution to the struggle. So stop giving the struggle energy. What I always say, starve the darkness and feed the light. Figure out a way to give the solution just enough energy to keep it fed and keep it living. And then eventually it's going to become stronger and more obvious and louder and more clear. And you're going to say, wow, the solution is right in front of me and I can't wait to reach out and grab it because now I'm aware of it. So to kind of wrap that up, in summation, I guess what I'm saying is that my vision for the Magnify method is huge because of all of these dots on my map that I experienced. I feel like I've got a certain perspective shift for each and every person that could provide them just the right approach or angle to finally get success. And if you're wondering about my own success, after COVID, after the quarantines, after the world kind of resumed, I want to fill you in. So I took about 8 months total off of drinking, starting in February of 2020. When I reintroduced it into my life towards the end of 2020, I want to emphasize the fact that I didn't allow myself to just go back to normal, or go back to pre-change drinking, go back to how it was. It wasn't just me saying, oh, I'm good now, I'm gonna go willy-nilly and have as much as I want, but rather in that 8 months where I took time away from alcohol and time invested into my personal development, I found that my identity was completely different. So by the time that I did reintroduce alcohol, I didn't look at it the same. I didn't look at it as something that's going to make something more fun or make me more fun. I don't look at it as the highlight of a night anymore. I don't even think of it as really a bonus anymore because I know in my identity that I have more fun when I'm clear-headed, when I'm in control, and when I'm not expecting to feel sick tomorrow. So when I started to reintroduce it back into my life, I said, okay, well, I need to set some healthy boundaries. If I am going to drink, these are the things that I will drink. If I am going to drink, this is the frequency that I will. If I am going to drink, this is how I'm going to do it healthfully. So I have all of these boundaries, and if you've watched some of my other content, you'll know that that's a big step in creating a successful moderation approach. You have to have these healthy boundaries that seemed really crazy to me in the beginning. By setting these boundaries though, I went from before drinking, like I said, 3, 4, sometimes up to 7 times a week, 10 plus servings of alcohol, most of the time more than 20 servings of alcohol in one setting, to now drinking maybe once a month, more like once a quarter. But it's something that I don't necessarily even plan out. If it happens because we're in a celebratory environment, because the vibes are really high, because I know that this is something that doesn't come along very often, like a wedding or maybe a family reunion or a barbecue for a holiday. It's not just a Thursday night nightcap for me. I would never really, that's laughable to me now, even though I know back in the day it was really, really a habit that I had to break. But, the weekly nightcap or the weekend binge fest, like that all is behind me. And I want you to know that if you want to be a normal, healthy, responsible drinker, that we can get you there. And I also want you to know that if you want to live a full, happy, empowered life, alcohol-free, completely sober, that's a possibility too. And the cherry on top is that it can be fun, it can be exciting, it can be peaceful, and it doesn't have to look like what a lot of us imagine in the early phases of learning to cut back, where we think that sobriety is going to be so boring and lonely. It doesn't have to look like that at all. Trust me. As you can see, I am here to challenge the current narrative around addiction recovery, sobriety, and even healthy drinking moderation. If you have any questions, make sure you know that the links are in the description. Reach out if you have maybe a need or an inkling to get some more information on your own personal journey with alcohol. I want you to know that it is very individualized, and I am here to help you cater that information to you, to your circumstances, and your personal goals. So like I said, go ahead and reach out through the links in description, leave a comment, let me know what your biggest takeaways were, or any questions that are pertinent on the top of your mind right now, because I am here, like I said, to challenge that narrative. But overall, my ultimate mission is to help you think different, to drink different, or never again.